Hot news: Trump is trapped and Pelosi refuses to help. CNNPolitics. The House Speaker, fortified by brutal polling for Donald Trump, refuses to provide the president an easy way out of his own political box as the government shutdown, sparked by his demand for a border wall, drags into a 34th day. In his latest skirmish with Pelosi, Trump effectively admitted defeat late Wednesday and conceded that he would not be able to give his State of the Union address until after the shutdown ends. Earlier in the day, Pelosi's victory came ahead of a pair of Senate votes due to take place on Thursday on dueling Republican and Democratic plans designed to end the shutdown. Neither is likely to. The president is trying hard to reshape a political battlefield that is stacked against him, as sources suggest. He is increasingly mystified that his tactics have not turned the tables on Democrats throughout his life, but he is finding in the new political context of divided Washington against an experienced adversary that his force of will and talent for engineering televised spectacles are not moving the political needle. After Pelosi accepted his dare Wednesday and cancelled his State of the Union address, Trump lashed out but failed to come up with an effective response. Cheese. But later, the president announced on Twitter that he had shelved an idea that would have done more to showcase his diminished political standing than to damage the Democratic leadership of the House. Trump did not specifically rule out some kind of political event next Tuesday. CNN's Caitlin Collins reported that White House officials were caught off guard with Pelosi's swift, decisive response. Her move left it's looking more and more like the president misjudged the politics of the shutdown, or is perhaps so trapped in his West Wing and media bubble that he's not getting an accurate fix on his worsening political position. Little that he does an Oval Office address, a trip to the border, a weekend offer that was swiftly rejected by Democrats seems to improve his position. Polls show that a majority of the public still solidly blames Trump for the shutdown and are opposed to his border wall. It's not worth the shutdown. A failed bid to turn the tide. The spectacle of the president and the speaker squabbling over a speech meant to highlight national unity was hardly in keeping with the dignity of either of their offices. Pelosi's claim it could take a few days to see whether Pelosi's move would make her look petty, as Trump's counselor Kellyanne Conway had predicted. Trump former economic advisor Stephen Moore said on CNN that Pelosi's move was a seventh. But Pelosi's hardball tactics amounted to a literal example of how she is using the constitutional mechanism of government to constrain and frustrate Trump, and a reminder of the importance of the Democratic midterm election victory. She has deprived Trump of a chance to make his best case to Americans on the shutdown in a spotlight he loves. The pageantry of the risk for Pelosi is that her strategy will turn off voters who are wary of overreach by the new Democratic majority, or that she could appear as much to blame as Trump for the Washington tomfoolery. So far though, she's on firm political ground. Suggested that Trump's position is deteriorating. In a finding that shows the president's job approval down to 37%, down from 41% in November and December, after a month in which news about the shutdown has drowned out most other political activity. But the president, ultimately. People who were with Trump on Wednesday see no sign at all that he is willing to cave in the shutdown. But CNN's The Official said Trump believes he is taking all the hits but is the only one at the negotiating table making concessions. A replacement State of the Union? It's not easy to see how the president can turn things around quickly. At this point but that scenario would likely damage him as much as his rivals. A GOP source told CNN's Dana Bash that Trump was again considering executive actions, short of declaring a national emergency, to go around Congress and build a wall that is critical to his political base. While the president could have used the drawing power of his office to attract attention for any replacement speech, it would, as he said, lack the impact of a formal State of the Union address. An alternative of a speech in a campaign rally setting would only have stressed the fact that, as is so often the case in his presidency, he was talking only to his own political supporters, rather than the entire nation. And the fact that the president would have been forced to find somewhere else to give the annual address would only have underlined that the State of the Union is such that he cannot even take his place in the House to give the speech. There's nothing that says, however, that the speech has to take place in January, or even at all. The Constitution. Donna Hoffman, a professor of political science at the University of Northern Iowa, co-author of a book about the evolution of the State of the Union, suggested before Trump's late-night tweets that the president would be better off waiting. If and
Raindrop, drop top, top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up.